a small boy, it was generally accepted that by the 21st century, we'd have intelligent talking computers in every office and domestic humanoid robots that would do the washing up for us. Scientists would have overseen and perfected the merger between man and machine. What a load of tosh that was. But don't despair, because I've got some big ideas on how to populate the world with robots. So, I'm off on a quest to find dedicated robo-boffins who share my vision and are working hard to make it happen. My journey will take me to Japan. There, I'll come face to face with a mechanically assisted superwoman. It's absolutely fabulous. And the world's most disturbing robot. Oh, I don't like it. Closer to home, I'll meet a little chap who shows a glimmer of real intelligence.
Mini Cooper.
Yes. And put creative computers to the test. And I'll enter the virtual world to get up close and personal with my digital twin. It's a ghost of me with a disease. If you think the relationship between man and machine peaked with the Goblin teas made, I suggest you brace yourself. The world we're about to enter is really rather intriguing and, to be honest, quite freaky. I'm on my way to Tokyo to look at what is probably the best way yet of combining the intelligence of the human brain with the brawn of a pure machine. Because here in the land of the rising sun, people are working on the idea that the future is best served by creating a hybrid creature that's part nuts and bolts and part flesh and blood. At the Kanagawa Institute of Technology, they are developing a prototype human exoskeleton, a mechanical jumpsuit that can double your strength. Konnichiwa, Ishii-san, James. Hello. Hello. Allow me to demonstrate the basic principle by lifting a heavy weight. Building a powered exoskeleton that responds proportionately to the movements of the wearer's body is not as simple as it sounds. It's only a machine. It has no brain of any sort, so it doesn't know how big the weight is, like that. Doesn't know how big the weight is I'm trying to... Straight. How big the weight is I'm trying to pick up. It doesn't know how feeble or otherwise I am. It doesn't even know what sort of muscular manoeuvre I'm about to perform. So, how does an exoskeleton receive instructions from the body? The trick is actually in this arm pad that I'm wearing, which includes a sensor, and I just triggered it by pressing on it. I can feel it pressing into my bicep. What it's doing is measuring very minutely how much strain there is on the muscle, which is telling the machine how much I'm trying to lift something and giving me mechanical assistance in proportion to that. And to be honest, this is very clever, I can actually control that simply by tensing the muscles. So I want to lift the weight. A bit more tension, relax the muscle a bit. Down it goes. See? Catch it there as it falls. Catch it again. It's really rather brilliant. And that's not the end of it, because what I'm actually here to see is not just this simple experiment, but something they've already built, a full-body powered human exoskeleton. Now, I haven't been allowed to see this yet, and I am very, very excited about it. In fact, I can hear it coming. This is the Wearable Power Assist Suit. Not quite RoboCop,
More Robocop's charming young sister.
And stop. Gotcha, Noah. That is brilliant. And what a fantastic noise. There is one design flaw as far as I'm concerned, which is that it was built for someone no taller than 5'8", which is why I can't actually wear it myself, and it's being demonstrated here by Akiko-san. Thank you very much.
The suit can double Akiko-san's strength. It's equipped with the same muscle sensors as the lifting arm, but many more of them.
It's absolutely a fantastic piece of work. It's a brilliant combination of high science, metalworking, electronics, electromechanical stuff, pressure systems. It's absolutely fabulous. Can you walk around a bit more for us? I find it exciting.
The Power Assist suit was not designed to fight crime, like Robocop, but for a far more terrifying prospect. Taking care of the likes of you and me once we are old and decrepit.
Let us move forwards 40 years. Mei-san is bedridden, his body addled by a lifetime's indulgence in sake and noodles, and he needs the lavatory. Nurse! Screens!
It's a great bit of kit, but whether it represents a pneumatically powered leap toward the future of robotics, I'm not so sure. So, what about a different approach? Performing an engineering miracle inside the body. What about bionics? Remember TV's Steve Austin, the $6 million man? Well, it's happening in real life. Time now for me to leave Japan and head westward, or eastward, or however I get to America from here. Here I am in Chicago, ready to meet a woman who once was blind but can now see thanks to a bionic eye. But before that, a quick reminder of how the human eye works.
Visitors to Chicago are often pleasantly surprised to find that cutaway diagrams of significant organs are freely pasted around the city. And here that concerns us, the human eyeball. Now pay attention. Light comes in through the pupil here and is focused by the lens here onto the retina at the back of the eyeball. Now the retina is stimulated by light energy and sends signals along the optic nerve to the visual cortex in the brain. And that basically is how we see. I shall leave that with you for a few seconds so that you can revise.
First of all, I'm going to drop in on Dr. Alan Chow. He's invented a light-sensitive microchip that can be implanted into damaged retinas. In a nutshell, he helps the blind to see. Dr. Chow invented the device in his basement, a proper boys' playroom full of model battleships and ancient scientific instruments. I liked him immediately.
Right.
So the implant itself is 2 millimeters in diameter. The individual pixels on there are approximately 9 microns in size, about 3 times smaller than the thickness of a human hair.
Right, so, and if I could do pi in my head, and this is 2 millimeters in diameter, I should be able to work out how many of these there are. I would guess roughly 5,000.
Yes, exactly.
So you told me earlier.
They're going to be impressed with that.
No one would believe I could have worked that out.
If, like me, you don't like eyeball stuff, be brave. The light-sensitive chip is poked through the eyeball and placed within the retina, where the defunct natural photoreceptor cells are. Because in Dr. Chow's patients, the other parts of the retina are healthy, it can still convey light information gathered by the chip to the optic nerve and from there onto the brain, helping the patients to see.
But I'll be right in saying that essentially this tiny little 2mm thing is like the sensor in a digital camera, covered in the pixels, or pixies as I always call them. When light hits them, they generate electrical currents, very tiny ones, of different intensity, and those travel down nerves into the brain, and the brain gives you the picture.
That's quite accurate. That's quite accurate.
Is this a bionic eye? Well, I was just thinking back in the 70s when we all talked about bionic people a lot. Bionic eye would have been a complicated thing implanted in your head and that allowed you to see through a wall and that sort of thing. Is this bionic?
This is probably the closest integration of a computer chip type device into a human organ.
I'll take that as a yes. It's now time for Dr. Chow to introduce me to Maria Zaccaro, the woman with the bionic eye.
Horizontal.
Maria began to lose her sight in her late 20s. Within years, it had become so bad she could hardly see herself in a mirror. So, rather bravely, she volunteered for Dr. Chow's groundbreaking experiment.
This is going to sound like a really facile question, but what did you really like seeing again, most of all?
My children. More details
right.
on my children's
Yeah.
faces and my son playing basketball and color. You know.
So you can see people playing basketball?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
And how does it feel to be in one very small part of you, the genuine bionic woman, who was a mythical person before, but is now very slightly a real one?
Well, it's good. It's my husband tells everybody I'm the bionic woman. I got a bionic eye. I'm worth $2 million.
Who wouldn't be impressed by Dr. Chow's miraculous bionic eye? Or excited by the exoskeleton? But these are not the machines I fantasized about when I was a young lad. No, my big idea back then was a robot that would do my bidding, conquer distant worlds and beat up the school bully. So, in search of that robot, I have returned to Japan. This is the Advanced Telecommunications Research Institute near Kyoto. It's home to this CBI humanoid robot, one of the most advanced in the world. CBI has a rather interesting way of being programmed, which I am now about to demonstrate.
So like that?
By donning a badly cut jacket.
Excellent, I'll take it. So, I move, he moves, it moves, whatever. And the system of powering all this is very, very sophisticated. His eyeballs, for example, are electronic, but the joints in his limbs are hydraulic, except, that is, for his fingers, which are pneumatic. And the whole thing is controlled by two PC-sized computers, which are mounted on that sort of backpack thing that he's wearing. Actually, surprisingly dexterous for a robot. Can't do this sort of thing, though. Nah. The clever thing is that the robot can remember moves it's learned from people wearing the motion capture suit, and then it can store them and use them later on. Here, for example, he's learned to swing a baseball bat, and he will swing it when he sees this special yellow ball coming. So if I just hold it up, I can see that he's identified it. I'll try a pitch. Rubbish.
Replicating human actions is very difficult for a robot.
Come on.
especially if the person who trained it was no Joe DiMaggio.
And that is cross. Ooh. Yes! He's excited.
Let's just see that again using a slow motion effect. Nice. I really liked CBI. It looked like it had stepped out of the bumper book of brilliant robots and really could make the universe a safer place. But such exciting lives were not always what lay in store for robots. A long time ago, their future looked decidedly humdrum.
It wasn't until the 1920s that the term robot was coined by a Czech playwright called Karel Čapek. He invented a whole army of them who were going to do those jobs that we love to hate. And the name apparently was suggested by his brother because it means drudgery in Czech and labour in Slovak. And that is an indication of what these things were going to do for us. The chores.
Introducing Mabel, the robot housemaid.
Let's be honest, these robots are rubbish. Even I could put on a penny and do the housework more effectively than this lot. Which sort of brings me to James May's first law of robotics. If it's going to do the chores, make sure it can walk.
Those early robots just shuffled around on crude casters, a bit like Peggy Sue here, thank you. Or these early tin toys. So the quest to build a truly humanoid robot was put on hold while superior intelligences tried to work out what was so hard about putting one foot in front of the other. But if you think about it, the simple act of walking, let alone running or jumping or dancing to ABBA at a wedding, is really one of the most complicated things we do. And it makes you realise just how sophisticated the human body is.
Building a robot that could balance on two legs and place one foot tentatively in front of another was challenge enough. But that's not how humans get about. When we walk, we lean forward and our momentum carries us off balance with every step we take. This problem was cracked by one group of intrepid roboteers after 2 decades of hard graft.
So, where have I brought you to see this robotic marvel of the modern age? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, perhaps? Caltech? Or maybe NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory? No, it's none of those. I bring you to Disneyland.
Here, in the most Mickey Mouse laboratory I've ever visited, lives the world's most advanced walking robot, along with his girlfriend, Alicia Jones.
Alicia, hello.
Hi, James. Nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Hello,
This is
Asimo.
Asimo.
Can I shake his hand?
Yes, of course.
Hello, Asimo. Ugh. And he actually has a robot Masonic handshake because he gives a little sort of tickle with his fingers. Is there a little boy inside it?
No, afraid not. It's all machine.
He was offended by that. He is sort of cute, I suppose, but a part of me also thinks he's about to kick my head in. Because he's a machine and he's possessed.
Well, it's just that. It's a machine, so the robot can only do what it's programmed to do.
My first impression was that Asimo walked a bit like someone who'd had a little accident in his underpants. But that is partly the point. He walks like somebody, not something.
In the early days, robots couldn't do this smooth, continuous slalom, could they? They had to go a straight line, turn a corner, do a straight line, think about it.
That's right.
This is actually a very fluid robot movement.
Yep. Asimo can actually move and turn on a curve without stopping, so you don't see that stiff robotic movement. It is constantly, with every step, adjusting the weight and the center of gravity and predicting that movement before it actually happens.
But Asimo doesn't go to the top of the class for walking alone. He has other tricks up his robo-sleeve.
Can he actually go up the steps? Is this...
Of course.
Yeah, that's quite impressive, actually.
But it's incredible to think about how fast the robot's actually computing all the different decisions that have to be made. You and I don't think twice about making a step down a stair, but it's literally moving so many different joints and muscles and in a human, and it's a similar kind of thing in the humanoid robot.
It's very good.
Asimo is also the only robot in the world that can run.
When animals and humans run, they are actually briefly airborne.
Right.
Both feet are off the ground. Is he doing that, or is he
Yes.
just a very quick
Yep,
step?
for 0.08 seconds.
He's actually off the ground.
That's right.
So that's real
So
running.
it's technically running.
There are over 40 Asimos in the world. This one can walk and run, but its knowledge of closed doors is, by contrast, very poor.
No, no, no. Asimo, speak to me.
In case you were worried, Asimo has made a full recovery. And we shouldn't let his accident overshadow the fact that his perambulative skills are really rather remarkable.
When Asimo made his first tentative pace forward, way back in 1986, it took him a whole 20 seconds. It was one small step for a robot, but it was a giant leap for robot kind. Because now, 2 decades later, he's able to walk around in a really quite convincing human-like way. And that's an essential building block in our quest to build a better artificial person. However, and I know this is going to sound a bit offensive to small bald people, but the thing I don't like about Asimo is that he's bald and small.
You see, it wasn't Asimo's walking that got me thinking, it was his appearance. If a robot's ever going to take up residence in my house, I'd like it to look right. But I'm not really sure what right is. What should robots look like? So it's back to Japan to meet a man who is tackling the issue head on. With his own head, in fact. I was about to enter the weird world of Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro.
Hello. I was wondering if you could tell me the way to Professor Ishiguro's office, please. Bye. Uncanny. Hello?
This is Professor Ishiguro's Geminoid.
Oh, I don't like it. I don't. No, I really find this slightly disturbing because whenever you meet a mechanical robot, you feel a certain amount of, well, it's annoying, but you feel empathy for it because it has sort of humanoid qualities. Even Asimo, even though he's like a bit of a precocious little brat, you sort of think, oh, poor Asimo, when he walks into the door and falls over. And you hate yourself for thinking that because it's ridiculous, he's a machine. But that is too realistic. And now I'm finding it slightly disturbing. His face is remarkable. I'm having to remind myself constantly that that is just a machine.
But my weird afternoon was about to get a bit weirder.
Professor.
Nice to meet you.
And you, hello.
Hi.
Now, you are real, aren't you? Can we just...
Right.
Do you mind if I...
Please?
Right, okay, good.
He's actually made his robot look just like himself. And for good reason. His experiment is all about our reactions to human-like robots.
What I want to know is, what is the effect of human-like appearance? Why we are so sensitive to the human-like appearance and human-like movement.
He wants to know how relationships with robots might develop. If we spend enough time with them, might a robot even begin to possess a soul?
If you spend 1 year and 2 years with a robot, the robot may have a soul for you. Soul is a kind of subjective phenomenon. If you believe robot has a soul, that is the soul of the robot.
What I think Professor Ishiguro is doing here is conducting a very, very clever experiment in which he uses his Geminoid as a sort of pointy stick to poke at our preconceptions about the relationships between humans and machines. And those are undoubtedly becoming far more complicated and far more intimate. But he goes a little bit further than that, because he says that if you believe a robot has a soul and personality, then you will imbue it with a soul and personality, and it will have one. But I'm not entirely convinced by that, because I still believe that a machine is just a machine and ultimately does humans' bidding. It doesn't matter how autonomous it appears to be, in the final analysis, it is doing what we tell it to do. Well, for now, anyway.
And telling our robotic chums what we want them to do is a huge challenge. I have to be perfectly honest with you. What you've been watching is a series of edited highlights. Every time we wanted a robot to perform a new task, it had to be recalibrated, reprogrammed. The whole thing had to be set up. It took ages to persuade CBI simply to take a swing at the board. If only we didn't have to program robots. Wouldn't it be simpler if we could just control them using the finest computer in the universe, that is, the human brain? Or better still, if we could just sort of think instructions to them. I've come to the University of sunny Southampton to take part in one of the most peculiar experiments I've ever heard of. Dr. Christopher James is wiring me up to an electroencephalogram, or EEG, so I can control a machine by the power of my mind alone.
By sticking electrodes onto your scalp, what we're picking up is electrical activity from the brain. On the channels on the screen, we can see the brain activity. And what I've done is put electrodes over the sensory motor cortex, which is the area of the brain which responds when you think about moving your arms, legs, fingers, etc.
Right.
All you need to do is capture that information and channel it into the computer. So what we need you to do now is to think about moving a limb, moving your hand, moving your fingers.
But without actually moving it?
Without actually moving it.
Okay, so with my left hand, in my mind, I am stroking a cat, and with my right hand, I'm making a fist and punching that really irritating bloke from the Building Society advert. Is that good?
Yeah.
With these dramatically different images in mind, Christopher asked me, or rather my brain, to steer a cursor to hit a target. And I was confident. How hard is it to sit and think?
Oh! That was close.
Very
I
close.
was steering it.
Yes.
Concentrate. No. Oh, come on!
This was far harder than I'd expected.
Okay, let's do one. Absolute concentration.
Remember, it's cat stroke for left, face punch for right.
Yes!
Well done.
That was a direct thought-controlled hit.
Stage 1 complete.
It worked.
Time to wire me up to the Merc. That is, the mind-enhanced roving chair.
This is a conventional electric wheelchair steered by a small joystick here, or at least it was, until Christopher took it into his shed and converted it to be steered by the power of the mind. I think very strong and positive left and right thoughts. They come spewing out of my brain through the electrodes, down the wires, into the EEG machine, and the EEG machine then operates the joystick with these little servos stolen from a model aeroplane. So let's see. Action, please. Stroke the cat, stroke the cat, cat. How about that?
Davros, creator of the Daleks, had something like this. He wanted to take over the universe. I want to stay on the illuminated test area.
Good right hook on the bloke from the Building Society advert. Now I think I'll stroke the cat. Yes. Cat. Hello. Hello, cat. Nice.
I found it easier to operate the kit if I stayed perfectly still.
What? No, I'm getting the cat and the bloke from the building. I'm going to stick with the cat, see if I can get back onto the dance floor. I mean the test area. Oh, bloody hell. I'm going to crash. No! No! Off! Sorry. I know that back at home you're thinking that this must be very easy. You just sit in a chair and think about things on the left and things on the right, but it's not that simple, I promise you. It's very difficult to empty your mind of everything apart from stroking a cat or hitting a bloke in an annoying Building Society advert. You try it. Think of nothing else but those things. I'm useless at this.
If I can't even think left or right clearly enough, I'm not certain brain power is the solution to my robot controlling conundrum. Because the whole point of me having a domestic robot is for it to do the washing up while I think about something else entirely. So, robots are going to have to learn to think for themselves. Time to enter the mysterious world of artificial intelligence.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, with a great deal of pride and pleasure, I present to you Electro.
We've long been excited by the idea of brainy machines. In 1939, Electro wowed the world with his way with words.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am a smart fellow, as I have a very fine brain.
Sadly, this bucket of bolts was fibbing. What he actually had was a 78 RPM record player concealed in his torso. Recorded on it were Electro's witty one-liners.
Okay, Toots.
Electro, behave yourself.
Quiet, please. I'm doing the talking.
I'm sorry.
That guy make on my football team.
Electro wasn't the only machine that appeared to be able to engage in conversation. Over the years, hundreds of chatty computers have been designed specifically to persuade us into thinking they are human.
My favourite was one called Parry, a computer built in America in the late 1960s. And its attitude reflected a lot of American sentiments of the time. It was vitriolic, it was suspicious, it was neurotic, and it didn't care very much for the ethnic minorities. A few transcripts of Parry under interrogation have survived, and I have one here. Why are you in hospital? I shouldn't be here. Who brought you here? The police. What trouble did you have with the police? Cops don't do their jobs. What do they do instead? Cops arrest wrong people. They arrest the right ones sometimes. The law should get those Italian crooks. Do you know any Italian crooks? I try to avoid the underworld. Not bad, is it? For a computer made 40 years ago. It's barely indistinguishable from a modern-day Alabaman.
But here's the rub. Parry only gave the illusion of intelligence thanks to a small repertoire of pre-programmed responses. What I want is real artificial intelligence, a machine that can learn to think for itself. I'm on my way to Frankfurt, a city named after the famous sausage. I'm in Germany to meet some very clever robophiles and apparently a very clever robot. Just how clever, I'm here to find out.
One of the great paradoxes that has been thrown up by research into robots is this. Robots and computers are very, very good at things we find very difficult, such as long division and VAT returns. But they're very, very bad at things we find extremely easy and instinctive, such as walking, talking, and seeing. We tend not to think of seeing as a form of intelligence, but it most definitely is. It's not a simple matter of light going into your eyeballs. You also need your brain to process all the information so you know what things are, how far away they are, all that sort of thing. And we tend to forget, but as children, human beings learn to see. And similarly, robots, such as my old mate Asimo here, must learn to see as well.
This Asimo is the smilier, smarter brother of the one I met at Disneyland. It looks at the world through two camera eyes. We interpret these images as a man waving, but to begin with, Asimo can't interpret anything at all. Professor Kerner here may as well be a psychedelic swirl of digital rubbish.
So, Professor, Asimo is just an uncomprehending box of electronics. So how do you make him look and learn?
Well, we start teaching Asimo to see just the way a baby starts to explore the world. So if you put an object close to the baby in its reaching distance, the baby immediately attends to, tries to fixate it or to grasp it. So going close to his grasping and reaching distance shows him this is an important object and he should try to attend to fixate.
So he's locked on target.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
As long as you are in this close distance, in this reaching distance, the robot will try to keep interaction because any object which is in this reaching distance is very important for him.
So if I walk over there,
then he will lose interest in you.
As indeed he has. Well, that's a very familiar sensation.
Yeah. We also can use acoustic cues, calling Asimo to raise his attention.
Asimo, look at me. Oh, there you go. All right, mate. Once we have Asimo's attention with an object, he can have a go at identifying what it is. Now, he's already learned about 100 different things. I've got some of them here. I'm going to try them out. And this, incidentally, is merely because his ears aren't really good enough for the voice stuff over a distance. This is a direct tap into his brain. Anyway, Asimo.
Toy duck.
Yes, that is correct. It is a toy duck. Next, I want Asimo to learn something new. I've brought along two objects for him to identify. One is his grandpa from the 1950s, and the other is a Mini Cooper, the British one. So, he's never seen these before. He's learning these from scratch. So let's see what he makes of this. Asimo.
Unknown object.
Grandpa.
Grandpa, say, yes, this is correct, or no, this is wrong.
Yes, this is correct.
Okay.
That means he's learned it. Now, we'll try that out later on. I'll go back with Grandpa and we'll see if he remembers who he is. Next, the Mini Cooper. Asimo. Pay attention, it's one of the most important small cars in history.
Maybe toy car.
Mini Cooper.
Mini Cooper. Okay.
Right. Now let us see if the lad can remember Grandpa. Asimo.
Grandpa.
And now, it's not a toy car, remember? It's now a Mini Cooper. Asimo.
Mini Cooper.
Precocious little brat, isn't he? Good.
But what Asimo was about to do next was the really clever stuff. First, Dr. Gurik taught him to recognise an ordinary chair.
Learn what this flat thing is.
But this time, Asimo is not just learning the shape, it's looking at certain generic properties. The chair's flat, a certain height off the floor, and so on. And once Asimo's got it, he is to nod. We then showed it an office stool. Now we can see it's a type of chair. But it's nothing like the shape of the first one. So, will Asimo recognise it as a chair?
So he's nodding, saying yes, he recognises that as a chair.
Yeah.
And just to make sure it wasn't cheating, I got them to show it a table and ask if that was a chair. It's not fooled.
You saw?
Yeah.
Shaking.
That's very good.
Hold on a minute. What you've just seen is a machine making a judgment. Asimo's identified an object it's never seen before by recognising its features and working out that these qualify it as a chair.
This is an interpretative skill at a very, very basic level, but it is that rather than mere recognition. It's not shapes in slots again, it's a bit of thought.
Yes, so it's basically towards some understanding of the concept of the meaning of things rather than just their appearance.
Right, so is this the beginnings of genuine intelligence rather than simply programming?
We are targeting for this, yes.
How long until he takes over the world?
I don't think this will happen. So
I'm not so sure.
I thought this was a pretty impressive glimpse of artificial intelligence, and the potential is mind-bending. If you can program a machine to think for itself, could you ever program a machine to have imagination like we do? In my opinion, there is a good way of putting this to the test.
Now, creativity, the ability of artists and scientists, all of us in fact, to express new, interesting and valuable thoughts. And this is one of the most important hallmarks, not just of our humanity, but of our individual uniqueness.
So, it came as a bit of a shock to me to learn that computers are able to compose music. All by themselves, apparently.
Today's computers are capable of creating entirely new pieces of music, not just random collections of notes, but apparently they can imitate the work of the great composers. Here is a little test for you at home. I have on the music stand of the piano 2 pieces of music that I'm going to play for you. One has been written by a computer in the style of Beethoven. The other has been written by Beethoven in the style of Beethoven. I want you to see if you can tell which is which. And so on. That's the first piece of Beethoven. Here is the other one. Look, unless you've actually been on hold to a call centre for your whole life, you will have recognised that that second piece was the work of the tousle-headed, half-deaf genius, and that the first one was merely the vomit of a digital contraption.
OK, perhaps it wasn't that bad, but all the computer's done is analyse the patterns contained within Beethoven's music. Then the software emulates those patterns. It's able to produce a musical score, but is that really creative? There were no new ideas in there, no hint of emotion, and that's important. Creativity requires something extra.
Here's a very cheesy example. Beethoven wrote this famous ditty when he was hopelessly in love with a young woman who simply wasn't interested in him. And the thing is, when you get to the thematic moment, I think you can tell. There's something going on there that defies purely logical analysis. And as purely logical analysis is all it can do, I think the computer's pretty stuffed, artistically.
Perhaps expecting computers to be as creative as Beethoven is asking a bit too much. After all, most of us humans aren't. Maybe all we need is a robot with a modicum of personality. So here's a big idea to get the ball rolling. Imagine transplanting an entire life's worth of experiences straight into a robot's hard drive, thus giving it the building blocks of a personality. But how? Well, the seeds of one solution lie in Dublin. I admit that this sounds like the stuff of science fiction, like Blade Runner perhaps, but the idea of digitally capturing memories is not as far-fetched as you might imagine.
Around the world, trend-setting boffins are stepping out of their laboratories and embarking on a mission known as, and here comes a new word for you, life logging, the digital capture and storage of things that might otherwise be lost to the drink-addled fug of human memory.
So I've decided to be a bit of a guinea pig in a James May life-logging experiment. This necklace I'm wearing is not man jewellery. It's a sophisticated camera that takes a picture every 30 seconds, or when it detects movement, or when light levels alter. I wore the SenseCam for an entire weekend, and here's what it looks like, compressed into 16 seconds. There are over 8,000 photos in the sequence, and frankly, it's all a bit of a mess. So I've come to Dublin City University to meet Professor Alan Smeaton, who has developed software that can make sense of my life log.
Okay, so James, what we've done is we've taken the SenseCam, we've taken your data, and we've downloaded all the images and all the sensor values. We've put them into the computer. We've then automatically analysed them to detect boundaries between one event and another event in your day. So
the software has worked out that that's when you say an event, it's like, I mean, that was me sitting down writing my bit for the newspaper.
Yeah.
So it's recognised that I was broadly always in the same place and doing a particular thing.
Well, the event before this was you in the kitchen. And then you did something, you moved from the kitchen probably into your office, and you can see from the time that it pretty much follows on.
Well, this is every day. I make a cup of tea and a piece of toast, then I go in the office and look at the computer and pretend I'm doing some work.
And this has been detected as an event because a change has happened, and that's from you being in the kitchen to you going into the office.
A look back at my life log reveals that my weekend started off in a pretty ordinary way. A couple of pints and a round of darts down the local. The following day, I moved junk from one corner of the garage to another, before having a quick cuppa. After going for a quick spin on the old goodsy, I decided to wash the car, and then rewarded myself with a pie. But parts of my weekend were a bit different from the norm. I went to the BAFTAs, which is actually rather boring, particularly if you don't win anything. On Monday morning, I was up at the crack of dawn to catch a flight to Dublin to meet Alan. And what's clever about Alan's system is that it can attribute significance to these different events in my life log.
Okay, so what we have in the SenseCam is we have 3 days of your life, which is enough to do each day and to segment each day into events. The computer has automatically determined that there's 36 events or happenings. And by looking at each of these 36 events and comparing them to events the previous day and the day before that and the day before that again, we're able to determine how visually unique each event is.
So that means a bigger picture is what the computer determines to be a more unusual event?
Yes.
Let's imagine this technology being perfected when I was 5, so I've been wearing this for nearly 40 years. Can it make these comparisons over a whole lifetime of images,
Well,
theoretically?
Some of my colleagues have been wearing these SenseCams for years, right? So somebody would have millions of images, and what we can do is we can take today's images for each event and compare it against how far in the past you want to go back.
And then it struck me, part of me and part of my life had been absorbed onto that computer's hard drive. It made me wonder whether I was looking at the relationship between machines and humankind in a slightly outmoded way. All the robots I've seen, are they simply manifestations of yesterday's future rather than today's? After all, Karol Čapek coined the word robot almost 100 years ago. Could the prophecy of machines and humankind living alongside each other in this world be rather old-fashioned?
We have to consider the possibility of a completely different future, one that nobody foresaw. I mean the digital one, all bits and bytes, not my beloved nuts and bolts. In the digital future, the convergence of human and machine wouldn't take place in this world. It would take place in a virtual one, generated by computers.
Okay, James, if you mind just looking into the top lens up here, we're going to take the first scan.
I'm being transformed into an avatar. For older viewers, that means a digital representation of myself. In the name of progress, every pimple, blackhead and stray nose hair must be recreated digitally. Face done, now for the body. To do this, I need to undergo a motion capture process.
Inevitably, it involves me wearing a ridiculous outfit. Right, this is how it works. On my body, 32 extra nipples made out of a reflective material. This booth is bathed in an infrared light. The infrared light is reflected from the nipples. There are 6 infrared cameras around the room. They pick up all these spots of light and they feed all that information to a computer. Now, because the computer knows the position of the cameras, when I move around and do this sort of thing, it picks it up, puts it in the computer, turns it into a digital James May. Right.
Having recorded my best moves, it's time for the computer wallers here at University College London to build my digital twin.
Right, I'm ready to meet my avatar. Not just some off-the-peg avatar from a cheesy video game. This one is bespoke. It is me and only me. And that's why we're back in this room where we did the motion capture, because this is also a sort of portal to cyber world. All of the walls, and the floor in fact, are screens. And I, or he, or it, or whatever it is, will appear in the middle, and I'll be able to look at he, it, me from every angle. In order to do that, I have to wear these special 3D glasses. Now, this isn't going to work in 3D at home, I'm afraid, because your television is 2D and rather backward, frankly. Anyway, bring me on. Here I come. Ooh, whoa. weird. Oh, hello. Hello. I really do appear to be right there. I can actually, by moving my head, I can see myself from different angles. It really is a three-dimensional thing. You know, there's the other side of me I can't see from here, but if I move around, I can do that. I can look at my own nose. I do believe that I should actually feel my shoulders like that, or my arms, my elbows, and my fingers. It does look like me, and stands like me, and has my face, my stupid hair. Although I also have to say that I appear to have been given a sort of 19th century consumptive pox, as if I've been going up chimneys since I was 13. It's not just like having a ghost with no substance, but it's a ghost of me with a disease. So, there you have it. A James May suitable for the 21st century, ready to sally forth and explore the wild frontier of Cyberland. And to be honest, he's welcome to it, because I know the virtual world will become ever more important, but somehow I'm just more of a moving parts kind of guy.
Call me a fuddy-duddy, but I'd like my future to be a bit more old-fashioned. I want it full of bionic women and teeming with mechanical men. Or maybe not him. You see, I loved the machines I saw.
Yes!
On a nuts and bolts level, they were beautifully crafted bits of kit, capable of some quite remarkable feats.
Grandpa.
It's only a start, I know, and yes, the ones in Star Wars were better, but even so, I can imagine a day when I have some descendant of Asimov living with me in my house, and that I'll be able to send him downstairs to get me another beer while I just sit and watch my holographic television. Assuming he works out how to open the door, obviously.
To put my big ideas to the test, or learn more about Open University programmes on the BBC, log on to open2.net. Next time, I'll be cooking a hot dog in the New Mexico desert, all in the name of understanding energy.
Hoping to catch the largest freshwater fish in the world, Bruce Parry continues his adventure along the Amazon tomorrow at 9. And next tonight on BBC Two, a busy day of Premier League action, Match of the Day 2 with the highlights.